again. Twila, welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Twila, first of all, give us a little bit of update on what is going on with your fight and what you are monitoring and watching very closely on a regular basis with Obamacare and anything that recently has happened that you can expose to our listeners, maybe about the exchanges or whatever that we're not hearing on mainstream media.
Sure. Well, I think there are several things. One is that we, let me see, maybe I should start with the exchanges first. But let me just say that we expose the fact that there is a hardship exemption that nobody has talked about in the media. So your readers may or may not know that there are 9 exemptions in the law, 9 ways that you can avoid either the mandate or the penalty. But at the end of the day, it's all about avoiding the penalty. So there are 9, and the 9th one is called hardship waivers or hardship exemption. And under there, the administration can come up with a list of whatever they want to come up with and declare it a hardship. And so one of the things that your listeners have probably heard is that they said anybody whose policy has been canceled is now able to get a catastrophic policy, even though it doesn't comply with Obamacare. That was one of Obama's decrees, right, his lawless decrees. Mm-hmm. Well, so that was hardship exemption number 13 of all of these exemptions. But we discovered that there's actually a number 14 on the exemption application form. And that 14 is just broader as broad can be. It's like, did somebody mess up and write this on there because this is something that they're proposing in the future, or is it actually something that's there and they just don't want to talk about? Because that one says that, another hardship, so whatever you want to claim as a hardship would get you out of the mandate and the penalty. And then you would think that you would have to provide paperwork or documentation for this hardship. But this is the only hardship where they say, please provide documentation if possible. So really, we've called this a get out of jail free card because it's huge. It's this wide opening for you to just claim for whatever reason that you have a hardship in them, and then you don't even have to provide any documentation to prove that you do.
So my dog has had 3 surgeries this year, which has really put a financial burden on me. I can't afford any kind of health care. That would be considered a hardship.
Well, that's, you are applying for an exemption, right?
Okay.
But you could apply for that one, but you don't have to provide any documentation of how expensive those bills were, right? And they could, but it's sitting there. It's sitting there as actually a possibility. Any other hardship that you want to claim, go ahead and claim it. And then don't worry about documentation. So you certainly could. You could put that in. I have no idea of the response of the department. I'm totally unclear if the department really knows that they put that there, because nobody's talking about it, and it's this wide open door to exemption. But maybe they did purposefully put it there just so nobody could complain that they about a hardship. I don't know. It's not being talked about.
So before I move on, let me ask you. You mentioned these hardships. Exemptions. I'm sorry, you mentioned these exemptions. Can someone go to your website and see that whole list?
Yes, we actually have a picture because the exemption page for the department lists only 13 hardship exemptions, but the application form for those hardship exemptions lists number 14, which we discovered. So we put them side by side in a screenshot. And that as well is available, as well as links to the original documents. Okay. So that's all on our website.
So it's cchfreedom.org, folks. cchfreedom.org. What are some of the legal alternatives to keep someone from enrolling into Obamacare?
Well, there are three that we look at, and one of them, of course, is just to get private coverage outside of the exchange, because Obamacare can only be gotten inside the exchange. So, to purchase a plan or a policy outside the exchange is one alternative. Another alternative is to use these exemptions, the 9 main exemptions, and then, of course, this whole list of hardship exemptions within that list. And so there are ones like health sharing organizations, which is for Christians, although there's another one out there called Liberty Health Share that is not for Christians, that may fit within the confines of the law. This, I think, you have to be determined. But that is also a health sharing organization with a philosophy as opposed to based on Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or I should say, a set of principles. And then, of course, there is just the fact that you can choose not to pay the tax. You can choose not to purchase health insurance, and then you can pay the tax at the end of the year, at the end of this coming year when it is tax time. Now, there's a really important thing to understand about that. We don't encourage people not to follow the law, but the only way that the administration is going to be able to get that money for the penalty if you choose to go uninsured is through your tax return, tax refund. And so it would be wise for all of your listeners to make sure that they do not have a tax refund, that they actually pay in at the end of the year for any taxes that they still owe. Because the fact of the matter is, the IRS is going to have probably a lot of faulty data. So imagine that that they decide that you owe the tax, but you don't owe the tax. But as far as their records are concerned, you do owe the tax. And probably you have heard that a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot of people, but some people have been told that they're incarcerated when they aren't, because this is what the exchange says. This is what the federal data system says. Some people are declared dead, but they aren't. So the IRS is going to have a lot of faulty information, and they're more likely to take this tax from you even though you don't owe it than not. So I just encourage people to make sure that at the end of this year, you do not get a tax refund, and you actually pay in whatever additional taxes you need, because otherwise it will be difficult for you to get the money back once the IRS has it.
So you need to go, all the listeners, you need to go to Human Resources and change your exemption status. What you are holding back in taxes, maybe you declare zero dependents, and so they're taking a lot out, but you're getting a refund. You might want to change that. So you can change that to 4 or 5. There is no, you can make that 9. It doesn't matter as long as you don't file that way at the end of the year, of course. So you file what your dependent status really is, but in order to get a little bit more of your money and less taxes withheld, you can change that. So you might want to suggest. I might want to suggest to you that you do that based on what Twila is saying, so that you don't have to deal with a refund that they can attack. So anyway,
right.
Great information, Twila. What are some of the other things? I mean, I think of these state health exchanges, which I had an insurance company that on December 27th told me they put me in the exchange. After October telling me that my rates were going up 31%, which I was going to, suck it up and live with. On the 27th, I got notification that I was put into the exchange. It was Aetna. I went on I'm still fighting the battle. I did manage to get to someone, but they just blatantly lied to me and told me that, they sent me notice. And I explained to one of the managers that I'm on the radio every day. I'm a financial guy, and I'm hypersensitive since Obamacare took effect to any mail that I get from the health insurance. I would not have missed it. So anyway, I'm fighting that battle. But I right away I was thinking about my privacy, that they turned over everything, and I understand. I came to find out later that that's perfectly legal for an insurance company to do that. to a government entity. Didn't realize that. But what are some of the things in the health exchanges that we're not being told about in these state exchanges that we need to be aware of?
Well, I think since the last time that I was on your program, the members of Congress have held several hearings about the data issues with the exchange.
Yes.
But and I'll talk about those, but there's also the narrow or ultra narrow networks that the exchanges have, which limit access to doctors and hospitals. So first of all, regarding the data, they had experts come before them who said that they would turn off the exchange because it has no data security. It is perfectly open to people not only to hack in and get information, but while you are on the exchange putting in your information, those individuals can also enter your computer.
Wow. Hold on. Hold that thought, Twila. I got to go to a hard break here, and then we'll get right back to you on that. We're talking to Twila Brase. By the way, her website, cchfreedom.org. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Financial Issues. We are speaking to Twila Brase. You know Twila Brase. She has been on this program. She is the expert on Obamacare and the state exchanges, someone that has stayed in the fight and stayed on top of this, sharing with as many people as she possibly can. If you really want to know what's going on with healthcare and the exchanges, you need to come alongside Twila in the sense that at least get her email. And your email comes out when, Twila? Every week? Once a week?
Every Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
Late afternoon. Yeah.
And they can just go to your website, right? At CCF or CC Freedom?
CCH Freedom.
Oh, CCH Freedom.
And right at the very top of the page is where they click.
CCHfreedom.org.
Yep.
CCHfreedom.org. Twila, you were talking just before the break about, the idea of the security with the sites, with the exchanges, that is.
Right. And I encourage, because the site is so insecure, and because, of course, all the data, even if it were secure, all your data is going to go into a new federal government database to be kept for at least 10 years and then used by all sorts of other entities without your consent for these so-called 9 routine uses. I would encourage people not to go onto the website. Don't go anywhere near it. Don't submit any of your information. If you want to just look without submitting any of your information at all, you can do that, although my guess is that they still gather your IP address, which is the address of your computer itself.
I'm sure.
But don't submit any information, because any information you submit goes into that database, and people have tried to get their information out, and they can't. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about was the narrow networks, but I also want to talk about being driven into Medicaid, because people just need to know this. If your listeners do not know this, if you go on and put in your information, then you are declared to be Medicaid eligible, you are automatically enrolled in Medicaid. This is what people are finding. They're just enrolled. There's no button to press that says, yes, I agree. They just automatically enroll you.
So
and
wait a minute.
This is content. Well, I'm sorry.
Hold on, Twila. So they determine this by the financial data that you put in, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And, that could be somebody who has significant means, but when their current income is not significant. And so now they suddenly are Medicaid eligible. And when they die, if they have at any point in their life received Medicaid, the state can come back and go after their home, their bank account, whatever. So, it's really important not to get onto that website unless you really want Obamacare and you're really aware of these pitfalls. Now, the other pitfall was the fact of the narrow networks, or what they're calling the ultra-narrow networks, which is that the health plans that have agreed to participate in the exchange to keep the costs down have determined what doctors you can and cannot see and what hospitals will and will not be in the network. And so these are very narrow networks, meaning that there are a few doctors in there. There may not be a specialist that you need, or there is a specialist, but you can never get in the door because he's the only one of that kind of specialty. Or he's not a specialist that you can actually work with. New Hampshire, for instance, in their exchange, 10 of the major hospitals, they only have 26 hospitals up there, and 10 of them they excluded. So they're not available. So people who have cancer, people who have significant healthcare conditions are finding themselves driving long distances to get to one of the hospitals that is included in this narrow network. So it's not enough to be covered. You know, people say, well, you know, at least I'll have coverage. Well, yes, you'll have a sheet of paper, but you may or may not be able to access care.
Yeah, and that goes to, I talked yesterday, I was talking about quality of care because I was playing a clip that, I forget which senator it was, Devin, maybe you remember, that was talking about the cost of health care going down. And it was Senator Durbin from Illinois and saying that, you know, that one of the things that we keep hearing is that healthcare costs are going down, yes, to the government because they're not reimbursing. They're not reimbursing at the same levels that they were. And that basically, to me, is an admission that the quality of healthcare is going to continue to decline as we see less and less reimbursements and more doctors saying, hey, I can't afford to practice anymore and are going away, particularly the specialists. So, you know, I think here's, I want to ask you, Twila, I would like to have a time that we can get you back every month because I know every time I have you on the program, it's of, obviously, for obviously reasons, as it should be, of great interest to our listeners. And it's so important to me that this proper information gets disseminated to my listeners anyway, and that they fully understand all the ins and outs. And some of them call me and ask me, and you know, I give them the answer to the best of my ability, but it's not going to have the detail that you're going to have. But I would love to have a time, and we can talk about this off the air, but I would love to have a time where, you know, we'll pick a day, a third Thursday of every month, and in the, you know, one of the time slots that you're coming back to give us an update on how things are going, and we can ask you some questions.
That would be great. I'd be happy to do that.
Good. We would love to do it. I've got to run, and Twila, I know you do too. You're busy, and I want to thank you for what you're doing for America. And I'm just disappointed. The only thing I could possibly be disappointed in is that not enough people are checking out your website, checking out your newsletter, and reading up and understanding this information. We need to be the most well-informed voters, friends, that we can possibly be. And Twila's website is one of the ways that we can do that. So I sure would appreciate it. I know you'll be grateful for doing it. But if you go to cchfreedom.org, cchfreedom.org, and right up the top of the web page, you can sign up for her newsletter that comes out once a week. That'll give you some updates on what's going on. But I'm sure there's a lot of other information there on the website that will be helpful to you. And it's cchfreedom.org. Twila, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. We sure appreciate it. And we're going to get you back next month and the months after that. And the other thing that I would say to you, Twila, here on the air, that if there is an issue that comes up with Obamacare that is going to dramatically impact the citizens of the United States of America, that is something relatively new that we're just hearing about or that we need to know about, please feel free to call Devin, get a hold of the producer and just say, I just got to share this with Dan's audience, because we would love that as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And I just look forward to the opportunity to be, just telling people, because really the news does not tell you everything that you need to know. So I appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you, Twila. Thank you so much, and we sure appreciate it. And I know our listeners appreciate it. Thank you.